Gilts are the future of your herd, and it already starts in the farrowing house. Selection is not a once-off process, it's a continuous event in the piggery. I am sitting here today with my first international guest, Emma Harris, all the way from England. Welcome, Emma.
Hi, nice to meet you, and thank you for having me here.
Thank you for coming all the way to have a chat to us, amongst other things. I am Marguerite Swartzer. I'm part of the technical services team for PIC Africa, and I'm in the fortunate position to have a chat to Emma about gilt selection. So Emma, if you're not in South Africa busy helping us selecting gilts, what is a day in your life?
So I work as a technical program manager for PIC Europe, specifically based in the UK. I work mainly now with our elite farms, so our kind of top farms, and making sure that the technical program is being implemented correctly. So I work with farms in Ireland and Denmark, and recently Sweden and Norway. And then as part of that, I then also go across Europe to help in terms of selection training as well. So
you are basically bringing global knowledge to South Africa. We are very fortunate. Is this your first time in South Africa?
It is. I'm very excited to be here. I just arrived early at 7 o'clock this morning, so it's hopefully going to be a whistle-stop tour, but I'm hoping to see a lot. And so it's a great thing to be here.
So I've seen Emma's itinerary, and she doesn't have time for safari this time. We will have to take her on a safari when she comes back again sometime in future. Emma, let's start right off with the importance of gilt selection. Why is it so important?
So gilts are the foundations of our herds, as you said. You know, without them and without having good gilts, you know, we don't have a herd that's going to last. And that's what we want. We want our genetics to last and be able to stay the course.
What is the bigger picture that we get to? So we select gilts, one would think once in their life, and then you're good to go. But what is the bigger picture on the farm?
Yeah, I would always say that gilt selection's a long-term process. You know, it happens even from when we start with piglets that are weaned. You know, we remove animals that are never going to be fit for the herd, all the way through to kind of when we do off-test and that point of gilt selection. And then beyond that, you know, we're constantly evaluating our animals. Every time they move, we have an opportunity to observe how they're moving and how they look. And I think it's a really important thing that when you're doing gilt selection, that it becomes kind of part of your everyday. You're always making those decisions.
What would you say is the three basic things that must be in place?
I guess the three important things that I would say are, you know, doing the basics right. You know, finding time in your day to make sure that you're looking at things properly. Also the size, make sure you've got a big enough pool of animals to be able to select from. You know, without the right numbers, we're never going to be able to hit the standards. And so beyond that, it's also making sure that the gilts meet the standards. So we've got enough, so that's why the numbers are so important, is making sure that we are actually selecting animals that meet the standard, not just trying to hit a number.
So our middle name is improvement, and our slogan is never stop improving. So as we improve every day with everything that we do on farm, what is the newest and the latest that was added also to selection criteria?
You know, we always reserve the right to get smarter, as a colleague of mine would always say. And while there's things that we would always look at, perhaps we didn't give things the right level of importance. So things like perineal scoring, you know, has become quite an important, we found has become quite an important thing to be looking at. You know, so by being able to include those things in our selection, it means that we now have sows that are less likely to have prolapses and things like that. Actually, you know, like I spoke about earlier, having sows that, you know, looking at even sows once they come out of the farrowing house and being able to select and evaluate them at that point is also a really important thing to make sure that we're keeping the right animals in our herds, because that is what's going to you know, be the next generation that's going to influence them.
So it's not only gilt selection, it's selection of your weaned sows as well?
Yes, absolutely. It's part of that ongoing selection that we need to make sure that we're doing.
Why would you say is it important to involve constantly the selection criteria?
Because we're always learning. You know, it's always that thing, isn't it? We're always finding new ways of monitoring and measuring things. You know, even if you take things like our leg scoring, which has been in place for over 15 years. We've now been able to incorporate things like digital phenotyping and which help kind of reinforce those things and help teach us kind of better on how that really does impact on the sow longevity.
So we are going to drill down now more to the on-farm level. Emma, on-farm, what does selection mean for the farm?
Yes, so we need to make sure that we have, we're thinking about utilization versus selection rate. And utilization is just, I need 9 pigs. Those are my best 9. That's what I'm going to take into the herd. Actually, we need to be able to make sure we have that selection process. I need 9 animals, I've got 18. That means I've got enough that are going to hit the standards, because every time we make compromises on the standards of selection, we impact and allow animals that are not what's going to add value to our herds in the future.
What would you say does the ideal selection area look like on farm?
Well, it needs to be, preferably a solid floor. We have to have enough space to be able to move the animals around. When we're selecting, we want to be able to see the animals from all angles. It needs to be well lit, again, for that reason as well. And depending on where you are, the pigs have to be able to be comfortable in that space.
And would you say there's a specific time of the day which is the best time to do your selection?
Yes, we would always recommend selecting gilts earlier on in the day, wherever possible. Pigs tend to be more active at the beginning of the day, as do us as humans, and we're a very important part of the selection. We have to make sure we don't get selection fatigue. So that's the other thing. If we're selecting large numbers of animals, it's maybe worthwhile breaking down that job into over several days, so we don't start getting fatigued, and we can keep making sure that we can evaluate the gilts.
That's very
in the same way each time.
Each day, yeah, that each day is the same as the previous one.
Absolutely, and we all know how we get when we start getting tired or run out of coffee. It impacts on our decisions, and we start trying to rush things, and it's not so good.
Yeah, so if you envision the situation on farm, you have a bunch of gilts that you have to select from, and suddenly you want to look closer to the gilts, so you come closer to them, you move closer, you maybe might even move in between them, and then they might catch a fright and get scared and quickly run away, and that makes the selection process much more difficult. How can you help them to be more used to a human?
Yeah, that socialization is so important when you're talking about gilts. It's not just when it comes to selection, but actually, these are going to be your future animals. We want to be able to have animals that are happy and okay being around humans all the time. So actually, right from an early age, it's really important to, on a daily basis, spend time going in with the gilts so that they're not frightened of you. They know who you are. They are used to humans as well. And it also it passes down through the generations as well. So it's really surprising that if you've got a calm sow, it passes on to the piglets as well, and it causes, it creates, calm progeny as well. So
and it makes your life easier.
Absolutely. We want to be able to see those animals from all angles. It's really hard if she's over there in a corner, trying to get her to move freely.
So there's a system called the systematic evaluation process or approach. Will you please explain that to us?
Yes, it was one of my Italian colleagues who taught me this, I have to say. And it's really helpful that when you're selecting large numbers of animals, that you can hit all the key points in terms of selection. So you would start at the head, you would work your way along the back to make sure that there's no humpbacks or dipped shoulders, moving down towards the tail, looking at the anus and the vulva, make sure that they meet the standards. Evaluate the rear legs again, making sure that the pig's moving as well, make sure that they're fit and functional and there's nothing that would cause problems for the animal. Moving up along the teat lines, so we want to make sure that there's no hernias and that all the teats look well, and then evaluating the front legs as well before moving back up towards the head. And it sounds so simple, but actually just by having that systematic approach, it means that you can make sure that you hit all the key things to remember. I mean, I've been selecting for a long time, and although we're talking about gilts, it still applies to boars as well. And I remember selecting boars with one testicle, and so by having things like this in place, it just means that makes it far easier and simpler when you're especially evaluating large numbers of animals.
Checks for yourself, basically.
Absolutely, yeah, making sure everything's covered. Yeah.
What is the immediate goal for you? No go, she must go on the truck.
So things like hernias, dipbacks and humpbacks, those would be immediate culls. Any open wounds or anything like that. When we're selecting gilts, we're also selecting in contemporary groups, so we can evaluate the animals against each other. So anything that hasn't grown at the same age as their litter mates, I would also be looking to get rid of as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the perfect underline, how does that look for you?
So we're looking for a minimum of 14 to 16 teats. And we're looking for properly developed teats as well. Now there can be some variation between different lines, so we always have to be mindful of that. So again, that's where it becomes really useful when we're selecting in the contemporary groups, because we can we've got a better understanding of what looks normal for those animals as well. So we want kind of bell shapes and things that aren't looking infantile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why is the skeletal and leg structure so important?
It's, we've been doing leg scoring as part of PIC for over 15 years, where we assign a value of 1 to 9 on both the front legs and the rear legs. And part of that is all based around the skeleton. And so when you think about how a pig's moving, you're thinking about the angles in the shoulder joints and in the hip joints, and you can see a real difference. So for the front leg scores, anything above a 5 is a positive select, and you can start to see that freedom of movement in those animals. So the higher the leg scores go, they start to stride out more like a cat, and you can see kind of that they've got good bounce in their front legs and good shape. And it's the same with the back legs as well. So the larger the angle, actually, the pigs start to walk on their tippy toes, and you start to see them kind of taking shorter steps. And so all those things, combined, actually, without them, without being able to see the kind of thinking about the skeleton as the pig's moving, can have an impact on sow longevity. So we do want those free moving animals within our herds.
And that we have digital phenotyping assisting us in these days, right?
Yes. We've now, as part of, as you said, we're constantly improving on our selection. And so, using AI, we've now been able to actually use cameras now to be able to put those scores onto the skeletons. And whereas humans, we're always prone to having kind of our own preferences, this really takes that all out of the equation, so we can really evaluate those animals. We still always remove animals that are kind of flat-footed or have other skeleton problems, but this really takes us to another level in terms of being able to actually assess how a pig's being able to move.
Emma, coming to our last question, how does the environment in which gilts are raised, or even sows, influence the selection? Environment's really important for our gilts. As always, we need to make sure they've got enough food and water so that they've got they can express their potential in terms of growth, and that they're not stunted. Overcrowded pens can lead to pigs just being too tight and not actually being able to move. And we need to make sure that they're to be able to assess them properly, that they can walk. Also, overstocking of pens and things like that can lead to issues like tail biting, which can impact in terms of selection rates as well. Thank you, Emma. Thank you so much for having a chat to us and answering all these questions. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
So if you watched up until this point, remember to comment the word selection in the comment section below. Remember to like and subscribe our YouTube channel to stay up to date with all our talks about pigs. Until next time, cheers.